Good evening and welcome to the November 19th, 2019 meeting of the Yountville Town Council. Our Mayor John Dunbar, his seat is empty tonight. He is out of town at a meeting of the National League of Cities representing not only Yountville but also by virtue of his position as president of the League of California Cities. And he will be back for our next meeting with a report on where he is and what he's doing. And so, Madam Clerk, if we could have the roll call, please.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Dornbecker?
Here.
Councilmember Durham? Here. Councilmember Moeller?
Here.
Vice Mayor Dorman?
Here.
Please let the record reflect Mayor Dunbar's excuse.
Thank you. And if you all could rise, please, and Sergeant Hallman, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I have not received any requested, changes to the agenda, so is there a motion to adopt it as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Are we going to have to voice vote? Oh, here we go. And the answer is yay. All right, good start. Item number 5, public comment on matters not last listed on the agenda. These are for items that are relevant to the town business, but there is not a specific item on this agenda. Is there anyone, we do have some public here tonight, is there anyone with a comment that would go under this section? All right, seeing none, we will move on to item 6, which is our consent calendar. There are 3 items on it, and at this point, I have received no request to pull any items. And if that remains the case, motion to adopt, please.
So moved.
Get a second.
And that carries by, that carries by unanimous vote. Item 7A, our CAL FIRE Public Safety Report. I don't see our CAL FIRE rep here, so let's move to B, which is our Sheriff Public Safety Report. Sergeant Hallman, please.
Good evening. So I was going to say something, make a joke at CAL FIRE's expense, but just in case they're out there doing important work, I don't want to do that. That might be bad. That might be a faux pas.
Good idea.
So. All right. Yeah, sure. Let's see, here we go. So this last quarter, third quarter of 2019, we did have 1,270 calls for service. That was up a little bit from this time last year, just a little bit, not too bad, but 169 calls. And that differs. I kind of start to wonder. I'm someone who believes that the hot and the cold of weather does affect our calls for service just from watching it for over 24 years. And we have had kind of a warmer winter, and I think that impacts us. The reports, we took 62 written investigative reports and made 13 arrests. That's sometimes that number when we said we made 13 arrests is a little skewed in the sense that it says 13 there, but the reality is by the time we start submitting fingerprints we pull off cars, samples of different things, evidence that we collect, or statements, investigations, often the number can be higher because it goes on beyond the quarter as we get DNA back from labs, we get fingerprints back from labs, and cases are made and arrests are made a lot of times out of jurisdiction. So it's typically higher, and we've actually been pretty proud of the deputies that are working here. They've made some great latent fingerprint lifts over the last year, tying people to a lot of our thefts and burglaries out of vehicles. So I always like to go or find out that it's not me anymore, but the investigators get to go out of county and knock on people's door and introduce themselves for things like that. Crimes against persons, we did have 4 simple assaults and 2 weapon-related assaults. When I hear that number, at first I kind of step back and say, oh, we got 2 weapon-related assaults, but keep in mind that that can also be with a foot, that can be with a hand, that can be with a car. So in looking at them, they're not as serious as they might appear at first. Crimes against property, we did have 9 total thefts, which is up a bit this quarter from last. And we currently have a group that we're watching and trying to track down. In fact, I heard them working on them down in Napa today, that we believe responsible for a lot of this and also some of our mail issues, because they've been working through Sonoma County and Lake County as well. And so we're working together to see if we can give them a place to stay and stop some of this behavior. Traffic collisions, we had 4 non-injury, 1 fatal. I believe the fatal was actually south of town. That was down on Solano, just south of town. And we ended up responding and helping out, and ended up first on scene on that one. And it was a driver that was passing at high speed, bad decisions, if you will. And thankfully, the other car, it was a head-on collision. The other car, the folks had very minor injuries. And it was still a sad outcome, but the people that were staying in their lane and driving the speed limit were okay for the most part. Traffic stops, we had 205 stops this quarter, 37 traffic citations, and 97 parking citations. We'll be looking at, well, some of the numbers are going to be shifting a little bit as we look at our parking management that we have upcoming and how we're going to manage that, and doing some training with the deputies as we roll out the map, and kind of excited about that. See how we can work with the chamber and different businesses to hopefully impact that rollout. We were involved in some different things throughout this last quarter, helping out with the Alzheimer's Walk and the Ride to Defeat ALS, Be Kind Walk, some different fun things. Wanting to stay involved and maybe be a little more involved in the future in some of these events. The safety tip this quarter, it's been dry for several months, but now we have fog and rains, and they're going to return eventually, probably pretty quick. The adjustment can be difficult and hazardous at first. Please drive cautiously, give yourself extra travel time. And if you're somebody like me, please go out to your cars, check your windshield wipers, get new blades, do whatever you have to do. Just kind of prepare Rain-X, whatever you use. I did put this out on Nextdoor as well, just because I think we give ourselves short time a lot of times when we're trying to get to an appointment, get to work, wherever we're going. And then once it rains, we assume that we still have the same 15 minutes to wherever we're going, and that's just not the case. So the extra 10 minutes can lower your stress, your blood pressure, and hopefully get you there safely. That's the thank you, but a big win column issue, at least in our neck of the woods, is that we completed our wellness app this week, which is a big deal. We're going to be rolling it out probably end of the week, pushing out PowerPoints, and I'm going to do a video for all the departments throughout the county, the law enforcement departments. And it's going to help first responders be able to work on their fitness, their nutrition, see clinicians if they need to, and hopefully build a well-rounded first responder, so that when we show up at your house or your business for whatever you called us to come there for, we're in a good place and we're healthy. So that's always what I kind of think. I always think, man, if I call 911, I want someone coming that's doesn't have a full cup. I want them to be healthy and happy and doing well. So that's the goal, and so we'll see as this rolls out, but I'm pretty happy that we've completed that and had support from all the departments to do it.
Thank you, Sergeant. Any questions or comments for the Sergeant?
No, but I just did want to thank you so much for coming last night to the disaster preparedness meeting, and you are a great asset, of course. So thanks.
It was my pleasure.
And I will add my thank you for last night, too. I said to the Sergeant, you're like a kid with Christmas toys every time you come to one of these emergency preparedness seminars and take out all your stuff. And thank you so much. And really thank you for your active work on the well-being, the well-rounded. That's so important. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
So I think we'll move on to Item number 8, we can pick up CAL FIRE if they're able to attend. We will have 3 separate public hearings under this item. The first one, item A, is introduce and waive the reading of ordinance number 19-489, amending chapter 17.116 of Title 17 of the Yountville Municipal Code regarding accessory dwelling units. Since this is a public hearing, I will open the public hearing at this time. We will have a staff report and questions from council to the staff. Then there is not an applicant, so we will then move on to public comment on this item. Then I'll close the hearing and there will be council discussion and action. And that's the same model we will follow for all 3 of these public hearings. So 8A, public hearing is open, and I believe it's Director Liston.
Good evening. Tonight you have before you an ordinance that incorporates new state laws regarding ADUs into the town's ordinance, and they're intended to make the town's ordinance consistent with state law, and they're the result of Governor Newsom signing 5 bills into law that are intended to reduce barriers to housing. And I'll go through those one by one. The first one is that the new law prohibits the town from imposing an owner occupancy requirement for the period of January 2020 through January 2025. There was a typo in your ordinance, and we've changed it from 2015 to 2025. We've also clarified that this section and the dates in it only apply to the owner occupancy requirement and not the other subdivisions as well. The second change is that the town prohibits, or that the law prohibits the town from requiring a setback for an existing structure if it is converted to an ADU in the same location and of the same dimensions, and it imposes a lower 4-foot setback for new structures. The third amendment relates to size, and the new law prohibits the town from requiring a minimum lot size. The ordinance previously required at least 6,000 square feet. That no longer applies. And then it also goes on to provide that the town must approve a unit of at least 800 square feet, regardless of the town's FAR rules. And so that's quite a departure from our standards. It also provides that an ADU may be 50% of the size of the primary dwelling, and it further clarifies, and that is at least 850 square feet or up to 1,000 for a 1-bedroom. We did make one amendment to the ordinance to section 17.116.030C2, and we removed a size limit that is no longer valid. The fifth requirement and last one is that the law changes how the town can impose impact fees, and impact fees are no longer permitted on structures 750 square feet or smaller, and it requires that the impact fee be proportional to the impact of the new use for those that are over 750 square feet. And all of those amendments are related to the state law and are required to bring the town's code consistent with that. You will notice that we've changed the designation of second dwelling unit to accessory dwelling unit, or ADU, throughout the ordinance, and that's simply because that's more the understood industry term, so it brings us into, it's more easily understood. And that is before you for consideration tonight.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Liston?
I had one that's actually just to clarify. In the ordinance under 14B, it recommends that kitchens with sink and standard built-in and appliances should be standard. And the standard size is, is pretty large for an ADU. And does it not permit sort of the apartment size appliances? Do they have to be,
No, so standard doesn't refer to size, it refers to the type of use that appliance provides. So a smaller refrigerator may be appropriate, but a below counter refrigerator just might not be appropriate for a dwelling where you're expected to have food that lasts several days. That's more of a mini bar type thing. So it speaks more to the use than the size.
Okay, thank you.
And I have a couple of questions. One, on A8, where it talks about the accessory dwelling units shall not exceed 1 story or 16 feet in height. Is that is a change mandated by state law?
That is, yes, the provision that is that we must allow a unit that's at least 800 square feet up to 16 feet in height. And I think there's one more section that clarifies that. And with the 4-foot side and rear yard setbacks.
Okay. And is it the lesser of, or how does that work?
It is at least 800 square feet. A homeowner can come in and request an 800 square foot unit, even if they had no available FAR on the property, where previously they could have a 300 square foot, which would apply to the ADU exemption. This allows something substantially larger.
And so this 16 feet is for new construction?
Yes.
And then looking at C2, where you were explaining about the 850 square feet, the 1,000 square feet. So I'm just trying to get in my mind what we're really trying to say there, and I think the last sentence may have an unintended double negative in it, because it says further, nothing shall not prohibit. I think maybe it should be,
Right,
whatever
let's
we're
strike
trying to say,
not.
nothing shall prohibit.
That is correct.
But would you just explain kind of for me in layman's terms what we're saying can be 850, 1,000, or 800?
Yes, so I'll start with, everyone can have an ADU of 800 square feet, but the first sentence otherwise regulates it that an ADU shall not exceed 50% of the size of the primary dwelling. And that is the sentence that is further clarified by at least 850 square feet, regardless of what that dwelling is or what half that dwelling is, and up to 1,000 square feet.
And then where does the 850 come in? Because
On
in there we've
the
got,
50%. 50% of the size of the primary dwelling, or at least 850 square feet.
so nothing in this section shall prohibit an accessory dwelling unit that is at least 850 square feet, or if more than one bedroom, 1,000 square feet. And then nothing shall prohibit an accessory dwelling unit that is at least 800 square feet. I'm trying to figure out the 850 and the 800. What is the difference?
Yeah, so the town attorney and I discussed it today, and it seemed very clear then, and now I seem to be struggling with the 800 and the 850.
I feel better.
The 850 and the 1,000 is intended to further regulate the 50%.
Right.
And I'd have to run some numbers in my head to fully understand it. This language is directly out of the state law. So,
Yeah, just to follow up, 800, basically if you have an efficiency unit, something that doesn't have a separate bedroom, you would have to allow at least, or we're not prohibiting something that's at least 850 square feet. If it has at least one bedroom, at least 1,000 feet. The last sentence is really kind of just supposed to be a catch-all based on the floor area ratio requirements, sort of separately addressing this requirement in state law that says nothing that the town does shall prohibit an accessory dwelling unit that is at least 800 square feet and 16 feet in height. So the intent for the last sentence is really just to make clear that we're not prohibiting something that we would otherwise be, or that we're required to allow.
One clarification, the 850 does require it be a standalone one-bedroom as opposed to a just large open ADU, so.
no, the 850 applies to a studio. The 1,000 is for the one bedroom.
1,000's if more
So
than one.
the way I read it is that, let's say
More than,
your main dwelling is 1,700 square feet, half of that is 850, and you're allowed to have at least that because of the 50% rule there. But if your FAR wouldn't allow it, you're permitted up to that. It basically counteracts the town's other regulations as that would bring it something lower.
And if your main dwelling were 1,700, under the new state law, the owner could have a 1,000 square foot ADU as long as it had more than one bedroom.
Correct.
Okay.
No. It is so hard to read. Honestly,
And
my
I
head
feel
is
your
swimming
pain
right
that this
now.
was written by a state legislator, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, is so that we can all
The-
understand
the
what it
key
is we're
in-
signing off
The key in
on.
there is more than one bedroom.
Right. So you get,
That would allow it even if it exceeds 50% of the size of the unit.
And at a
Primary unit.
minimum, we have to allow 800 if a person wants it. And we have a lot of homes that are smaller than 1,700 square feet. So basically, they're able to build an 800 square foot ADU on their lot with 4-foot setbacks.
okay, and I'm not going to belabor this because you're telling me it's what the state legislators come up with, but I will just say it doesn't track with me because it says you can't exceed 50%. However, we can't prohibit anything less than 850. And then the next sentence, we can't prohibit anything less than 800. So to me, that's just a disconnect. But if you guys need to, I guess you'll bring it back to us. I realize that's what the state said. I'm just trying to figure it out for our residents and ourselves.
Here, here.
So, with that said, all of the changes in here are mandated by the new state law. Is that correct? Those are the
Yes.
only changes we're making?
Yes.
Okay.
Other than changing second dwelling to ADU.
Other than, right. Okay, any other questions or comments for the staff, now that I've muddled it up? All right, then, public comment. Anyone from the public care to comment on this? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, ask for council discussion and/or a motion, please.
I move that we introduce and waive the reading of ordinance number 19-489, amending chapter 17.116 of Title 17 of the Yountville Municipal Code regarding accessory dwelling units.
And that's as amended, you took out a word not? And
Yes.
did you
As amended with,
Did you push motion?
sorry.
Do we have a second?
I seconded it.
Thank you.
Voila.
Passes unanimously, thank you. Now moving on to 8B, another municipal code amendment. Introduce and waive the reading of ordinance number 19-490, repealing and replacing certain sections of Yountville Municipal Code Title 15 by reference, to adopt by reference the 2019 California Building Standards Code. And I believe Director Liston, this is you also.
Yes.
And I will open the public hearing and ask for the staff report, please.
Good evening. So every 3 years, the California Building Code is updated, and the town and all other California jurisdictions are required to adopt those codes. That is what is before you tonight and is the primary purpose of those amendments. However, we do have 3 local amendments that I'd like to call out for your attention. 2 of those have been in the code since 2016 and earlier, the first of which provides different standards than the state for installation of fire sprinklers in residential buildings. And the state law provides that a remodel or addition to a building that doesn't already have sprinklers isn't required to have one. The local amendment provides that when you touch 50% of the building, fire sprinklers are required. The other change is that an operational permit is required for temporary tents and structures of 200 square feet or larger, where the state law provides that the figure is 400 square feet or larger, and that's due to the number of tents that are generally approved here in town, and so that has fire department oversight in issuing those permits. There is a new change in the code that we are presenting to you for your consideration tonight, and it would prohibit the use of new wood shingles and shakes in roof assemblies, and really the purpose is to reduce the increased risk of fire that wood roofs provide, and that's from wind and embers and the fact that they can light and spread so quickly, especially when houses are so close to one another. And that is the reason that it's in the code, that we're proposing it in the code before you tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Director Liston?
I have one, and that is, Director Liston, does that mean that in new development, for example, but also if someone were to renovate their home and they had an existing shingle roof, that they would have to change it?
It would, not a renovation in general, it would apply to a re-roof. The re-roof would
I see.
require that they replace it. So you touch the roof, you replace it with something other than a wood shingle. So it'll be one at a time in neighborhoods that have wood shingles, that they are slowly eliminated.
Right.
But yes, otherwise to new construction.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Director Liston? I have a couple. One is on the sprinkler protection.
Yes.
Are we, and that's under section 15.32.020, and it talks about throughout all new detached buildings, it talks about sprinklers. If there is a new ADU built for living as a living unit, are sprinklers required there?
It depends on whether the main dwelling has sprinklers, and if the main dwelling does not have sprinklers, the ADU is exempt under state law.
And if we wanted to require that the ADU have sprinklers, does state law prohibit us from
Yes,
doing that?
that's not one that we can apply a local amendment to.
Okay. And then, again, math is never my friend, but I'm just trying to figure out the tents. In excess of 200 square feet or a canopy in excess of 400 square feet. And then it says exceptions, a tent open on all sides, which has a maximum of 700 square feet. So I'm trying to make my mind work, 700 square feet and the 400 square feet.
So those are all terms that are defined in the California Building Code, and they apply to different structures. So in layman's terms, it all sounds like the same thing. It's separately defined in the building code.
Okay. All
We
right.
should also clarify that when we're talking really about these tents, they're not the camping tents. They're the large special event tents and canopies installed for a number of activities that way. And especially in winter use or large group functions, they can have heaters and devices in them. So it's important that the fire marshal's office inspects them to make sure that they're safe for the occupancy in them.
Thank you. Any other questions for Director Liston? All right, then a motion, please,
Do we
on
ask for
this.
public comment?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Public comment on this? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for further discussion, council discussion or a motion on this proposed municipal code amendment.
I would like to propose to introduce and waive the reading of ordinance number 19-490, repealing and replacing certain sections of the Yountville Municipal Code Title 15 to adopt by reference the 2019 California Building Standards Code.
Second.
Oops, that's me. It didn't fail. Operator error. Can you do a voice vote, please?
Okay, could we have a voice vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carries unanimously.
Sorry, that's my fault.
Our next and final public hearing is item 8C, consider adoption of resolution number 19-3955, approving the 5-year expenditure plan for fiscal year 2020 through 2021 through fiscal year 2024 through 2025, and resolution number 19-3956, certifying fiscal year 2018-19 maintenance of effort amount of $223,206 as required by Measure T ordinance and agreement, also known as Napa County-wide road maintenance tax. And this is also a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing and ask for a report, please, from Director Tagliabashi.
All right, thank you. While we work through our technical difficulties, Vice Mayor, members of the council, it's my pleasure tonight, and for your consideration, adoption of a resolution to approve our 5-year expenditure plan from 2020 through 2025, and also a resolution certifying our maintenance of effort, or MOE, of $22,302.06 as required by the Measure T ordinance. So just a little bit of background. this was last before you about 2 years ago. Every 2 years, we're required to update the 5-year plan, so we are following along with the requirements of the ordinance. It's required to be done before January 1, and that needs to be before the NVTA TA board and the ITALC committee. So to get through all of those groups, we have to be a little bit earlier than that. So we appreciate your cooperation with trying to get this approved and into those bodies. The MOE was a average of 3 years, 07, 08, 08, 09, and 09, 10. There was a little bit of discussion around the MOE when we initially brought it forward. As with all agencies, there were some questions. Eventually, we settled on the number that is before you of 223,206. We are well above that number, and tonight's presentation will just take you through a little bit of what our plan includes and doesn't include and where we're at now. So the picture that you see here on the screen is our first Measure T program, which was the Yount Street reconstruct. So you can see on the left-hand screen what the street looked like before we did the water line job, which preceded the paving, and then the paving job, although the fall colors make it definitely stand out a little better. But that road will last in excess of 25 years. These roads that we're designing, especially the ones that we're doing a full depth reclamation when we're grinding up the material and adding a little bit of lime and cement, are made to last at least 25 years. So just to give you all a little bit of background on what we're doing and what the documents that are attached to the report mean. Light maintenance for us is a microsurface. There is a little bit heavier maintenance product, and we define that as heavy maintenance, a dig out. So there are some areas where the pavement has failed, requires a little bit more repair before we do the microsurfacing. There was some trial and error around microsurface. We tried a slurry seal early on. It doesn't last as long. It's not as well received by the residents, and so we don't even use that, except the only place we will use a slurry seal is on a parking lot. So if it's out on a travel way here, whether it's out on a main road or in a neighborhood, microsurface is the minimum surface treatment we're going to do to a road. Light rehab, that'll be a 2-inch overlay or a mill and fill. So that will be a big piece of machinery. A grinder grinds along the curb area, grinds at each end of the paving job, and then add 2 inches of asphalt. Heavy rehab is what we saw out on Yount Street, where they grind up the material. They off-haul a small amount of the material. They then add lime and or cement to stabilize the base and then pave over the top of it. The real beauty of that process is we're actually using the material that's in place instead of off-hauling material and bringing in new material. We're actually using the existing pavement as a part of the substructure, grinding that into the street, and then paving over the top of it after we get the street profile where we want it. As we talked about the MOE, so those 3 years average, 223,604. This year's MOE expenditure with the paperwork attached in the staff report, $230,822. The Measure T projects that we have done so far include the Yount Street reconstruct that we did earlier this spring, and then we did a microsurfacing project that just finished up various streets, most notably the Toyon Terrace neighborhood, a small portion of the area Vandeleur Park on Jefferson, and a couple of streets in Old Town. So we're going to follow up with more of that now that the Measure T money is coming in on a more regular basis. The average for the next 5 years for Measure T revenues for our town is $548,678. That's a pretty conservative estimate. We're coming in a little bit above that right now, so we're planning our work around that number, and we assume that the number is going to be a little bit higher, so we'll have a little bit of a cushion. Last council, we talked about the Washington Park neighborhood. We had to reconfigure our 5-year projects list based on the Washington Park water main work that's going to go on. As you all are aware, we typically will do a water line or sewer line project and then pave that street after that work is finished. So we're going to follow that policy. We plan on doing that work early next fall, and then we will let out a contract to try to pave that neighborhood either late fall or early spring of 2021. As you can see, it's around $520,000. That price is probably a little bit conservative, but at the same time, prices continue to go up. So it could change a little bit. 21, 22, light rehab, again, that's an overlay or a mill and fill. That'll be from Washington Street, from the north town limit, so just north of Yountville Community Park, all the way down to Weber. 22, 23 is the Vintage HOA, so Vintage, Vista, and Vista Court. Part of Heritage, a small part of Old Town, Yountville Cross. So as you can tell, the difference between the first 2 years and year 3 is we're going to do a lot more light rehab and light maintenance. So a slurry seal basically, or a microsurface with some dig outs. The money goes a lot further when you're doing that kind of work, and as a result, we're able to cover more of the town's neighborhoods. Year 4, 23, 24, $545,000. Again, light rehab, which is a microsurface. That's going to be Washington Street from where we stop at Weber and continue on to the southern town limits. And year 5, that's going to be an overlay again, light rehab overlay or mill and fill. That'll be Yont Mill Road. So basically from about where the cemetery starts all the way through to town limits, and also part of Heritage Way, and then a small piece of Washington Street from Yount to Oak Circle. This is the 5-year plan in a map so that you can visualize it and you can kind of see how we have it laid out. 2021, the Washington Park neighborhood. 21, 22, basically Washington Street. 22, 23, we go into that microsurface program, so it's kind of spread out a little bit. And then years 4, 23, 24, down at the southern end of Washington, and 24, 25 will be that piece of Yount Mill Road, a small portion of Washington, and the Heritage neighborhood. And with that, I'm happy to answer any comments or questions you might have.
Joe, just one thing to add is that, as you all are aware, an existing fiscal year 1920 project includes the work on Oak Circle.
Oh, that's correct. Yep,
So
that's correct.
just something when you look
The
at
town
that.
manager is correct. We are out to bid on that, and that was in the very first slide, actually. Oh, it wasn't. Yep, you're right. That's going out to bid January 7th. We'll have it before you all for your consideration for plans and specs, and it will go under construction tentatively in April with your approval. So we will reconstruct that road from Hopper Creek Heather, basically around the corner to Vineyard Park, and then from Vineyard Park back onto Oak Circle will be a mill and fill.
Thank you, Director. Any council questions for Director Tagliabashi? Seeing none, any member of the public wishing to come forward and offer comments or questions on this item? Yes, sir. If you are so inclined, please state your name and then,
Seth Thenscher, 6740
Thank you.
Jefferson Street. Director Tagliabashi, I was wondering, so you said the surface treatment, the micro seal, that is not slurry seal? Is that what you
Correct.
said?
That's correct.
So it's less of the material would be picked up by car and or bike tires? Or is that still an issue?
It's always an issue with paving.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah,
that's the
so
nature of paving.
there's no real alternative to that for a light surface
Yeah,
treatment?
you have an asphalt product that takes some
Yeah.
time to cure.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
thank you, Mr.
That's my
Tensher.
question.
So I will now close the public hearing, ask for council discussion or further questions or a motion to approve this. Do we need, Mr. Reed, do we need 2 separate motions for the 2 resolutions, or can they both be in one motion? So one motion for both resolutions. one of which is the project list and one of which is approving the maintenance of effort that will then go on to the NVTA and the ITOC.
So moved.
I'll second.
And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item number 9, which is administrative items. We have none. Item number 10, staff informational reports.
No additional items.
Thank you. Item number 11, council meeting reports, comments, and agenda item requests. A is the Napa County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. Councilmember Dorenbecker, anything to report on that?
I'm sorry, I had a hard
That's
time. No, I actually have that meeting this Thursday.
All right. Napa Valley Transportation Authority, which is item 11B, that meeting is tomorrow. Councilmember Moeller, Upper Valley Waste Management Authority.
I reported on it. We don't meet until December. We might December. Yes.
Thank you. D, League of California Cities. That looks like council members Moeller and Dorenbecker.
Okay, well, I'll report that we will have in December a planning meeting for the North Bay Division leadership here in the town of Yountville. And prior to that, just the week prior, we will have the league leaders meeting and conference at the Meritage in Napa. So those things are coming up, and then I'll report out on them after they've come up.
Thank you. Councilmember Moeller, any league report?
I don't have any league report, but what I don't see on this very long list is what I did have a LAFCO meeting yesterday, and the LAFCO update is that LAFCO finally approved Napa Pipe. So we are detaching 155 acres from the county of Napa and incorporating those into the city of Napa. We have given it our final approval contingent on getting a final notice for the, we have the tax sharing, that's all complete, the final notice for the affordable housing agreement. And we hear they're going to have that December 17th, but they have up to a year. So been a long-term project for LAFCO, and finally made it through a lot of regulatory and EIRs and CEQA and all that. So pretty big news, though.
Thank you. Thank you. Cannabis Standing Committee, item E, nothing to report. Parking ad hoc, council members Durham and Moeller. But now we're going to have a report from Councilmember Dorenbecker on the Emergency Preparedness Ad Hoc Committee.
We had our second annual workshop last evening, and we had to postpone it because when we were going to have it at first, we had a PSPS. So we didn't have power. Actually, it came on that day, but we felt that everybody was probably too stressed out to deal with it. So we had it last night, and we had 50 plus or minus in attendance there, and it went very well. We have had now 10 people sign up for their neighborhoods to be part of the Yountville Neighbor Network. And we had 7 people sign up to become part of the ham radio network. So we felt that was a really good step in the right direction. And I think everyone enjoyed it. And I got some feedback already that everyone enjoyed playing Prepperty, which was our version of Jeopardy. So it turned out to be enjoyable and fun, and people did say they learned things. So I was happy with it.
It was fun, I will say, and I will thank Councilmember Dorenbecker. It was her idea to have fun, and it was a good one. And thank you to the Chamber of Commerce, because they did help us bring in some provisions that made the evening fly by. So thank you, Chamber. Any other reports or announcements?
Can we allow future agenda items under this category? And if,
I believe we can. Is that
if
all
we-
right, Mr. Reed?
so a future agenda item I'd like to recommend is maybe having the staff come back with a evaluation of the possibility that Yountville might want to consider not allowing burning of vineyards that are within the town limit, and also consideration of not just moving them outside of town limit, but maybe some provision of grinding or some other non-flammable mechanism of getting rid of vines.
Consistent with the town council protocols, is there consensus for staff to work on this and bring something back?
I feel so.
Yes.
All right.
Unanimous direction. Any other reports or announcements? So I have a few just wrap up. The Napa Valley Film Festival just wrapped up here, including screenings at the Lincoln Theater. Looking forward to the Yountville International Short Film Festival coming in the new year. I did read in the paper today that finally the first new First Street roundabout will be open Thursday. So for those of you traveling. And November 24th, the holidays in Yountville kick off with our annual tree lighting. It will be November 24th, 4:30 till 6:30 with the actual lighting, I believe at 6:15. There is no charge, but please do call or email our Chamber of Commerce and let them know you will be there. As part of our holidays in Yountville, I'm just going to name a few of the things. We have the Shop Small Saturday that supports our local business. There will be specials throughout town. Shops at the marketplace will have refreshments and gift wrapping basically all afternoon, November 30th. That's November 30th. Also, November 30th is the first free carriage ride day. Pick it up at the community center starting at 4:30. Holiday Bingo, December 3rd, 2 till 4. And Home Alone, the movie, December 6th, Lincoln Theater, 6:30, also free, all part of the holidays in Yountville. A lot of this is on the town website, townofyountville.com. A lot of it is on the chamber website, yountville.com. And we have no closed session, so if there is no further business, a motion to adjourn, please, until our next regular meeting of December 3rd.
So moved.
Second.
And in the meantime, I think the motion's going to pass, so thank you very much, and happy Thanksgiving to all.
And maybe it should